All right, welcome to This Explainer. Today, I want you to literally step into the shoes of a lead investigator with me. We are reopening some bizarre historical cold cases, and we've got a very specific mission here. We are going to completely strip away the sensationalism, the urban legends, and the wild internet rumors. Instead, we're going to focus purely on the hard, verifiable evidence. Now, history is definitely full of strange occurrences, but as focused learners, we don't just accept the paranormal at face value, right? We look for data. We look for the facts. So grab your notepad because we're diving deep into the archives.
Here is our agenda for today's investigation. We're going to methodically work our way through 4 specific files: the Washington motorcycle enigma, the ultraviolet anomaly, the 1956 vanishing pilot, and finally, the Australian John Doe. Let's process the evidence. All right, let's open File 01, the Washington motorcycle enigma. Notice the stark contrast in how this event was initially processed. On one side, we've got the early reports, locals claiming a motorcycle was operating completely on its own, spawning all these wild urban legends about ghost riders and phantom engines. And, it's highly entertaining, sure. But on the other side, local intellectuals and academic analysts stepped in. They absolutely refused to accept the supernatural. Instead, they demanded logic, breaking down those weird reports of a self-propelled bike into verifiable mechanical components. And this brilliantly illustrates a core concept we really need to keep in mind today. An anomaly isn't just a ghost story. By definition, an anomaly is simply a deviation from the common rule, type, arrangement, or form. And crucially, it's a deviation that requires further investigation. When those academics looked at the Washington motorcycle case, they didn't see magic. They saw a physical anomaly missing a scientific explanation. They basically viewed it as a giant puzzle waiting for the right variables to be understood.
Moving right along to File 02. The ultraviolet anomaly.
So, if we actually read through the historical laboratory reports, the known variables are pretty wild. Subjects were exposed to ultraviolet light, and right after this exposure, completely unexplained physical reactions were reported. We're talking temporary glowing of the skin and a rapid, brief change in cellular pigmentation that completely defied immediate biological explanation. But here's the absolute critical part of this dossier. The verifiable scientific data remains inconclusive. We know the exposure happened, and we know the glowing reactions were actually observed, but the actual mechanism, the how and the why, is a total blank in the record.
So what do we do with that? How do we interpret that blank space? Do these bizarre UV reactions point to something beyond our reality? Or, and this is what a true investigator has to ask, are they merely undocumented chemical variables? I mean, history is packed with medical and chemical reactions that honestly seemed like absolute magic until the science finally caught up. As rational skeptics, we have to assume the latter. The data isn't supernatural. It's just missing.
Let's look at File 03, 1956, the vanishing pilot. Let's walk through the flight log and see how this builds chronologically. Back in 1956, a standard military aircraft departs on a totally routine coastal route over the Pacific. Then, mid-flight, the vanishing occurs. The pilot and the plane completely disappear from radar tracking. No distress call, nothing. But the real mystery here, the detail that historians and investigators absolutely fixate on, happens post-incident. When authorities go to check the logs, a crucial audio recording from that exact time frame is simply absent. It's just gone.
Now, we've got to be really careful how we frame this. It is incredibly tempting to look at a missing 1956 recording and immediately cry, cover up, or, alien abduction. But as forensic historians, we must define this as a data void. The chain of custody for the evidence was broken. The audio is absent, and that absence creates a literal black hole in the historical record, right where a rational explanation should be.
There's an academic quote that really hits the nail on the head here. The absence of evidence hinders historical consensus, leaving a void where verifiable facts should reside. Historians don't view the missing pilot as a supernatural event. They view it as an incredibly frustrating roadblock. Without that audio recording, we just can't reach a historical consensus. We're left only with the fact of the disappearance and absolutely nothing more. Finally, let's crack open File 04, the Australian John Doe. Okay, let's look at the strict, verified forensic facts of this one. An unidentified person was located on a beach in Australia. Upon investigation, authorities found a total lack of corroborating identification. No matching dental records, no wallet, and astonishingly, the labels had been completely removed from all of their clothing. That leaves an absolute zero in verifiable data. Because of this really intentional lack of a historical footprint, the case actually remains an open investigation to this very day. When authorities and historians are faced with a John Doe like this, they don't just guess. They follow a super rigid logical deduction process. Step 1, secure the initial location to preserve any physical data. Step 2, search for identification variables. So that's anything from those removed clothing tags to biological markers. Step 3, consult historical missing persons data to cross-reference the anomaly against known records. In the Australian case, Step 3 yielded absolutely nothing, which is exactly why the identity remains such a frustrating void.
All right, let's bring it all together for the investigator's conclusion. Reviewing this cross-case breakdown, whether it's the Washington motorcycle lacking a mechanical explanation, the UV light reactions missing biochemical data, the 1956 vanishing pilot defined by an absent audio log, or the Australian John Doe lacking basic identification, every single case here shares one glaring common denominator. There is a critical gap in verifiable evidence. The mystery doesn't exist because these events are magic. The mystery exists because a very specific piece of the puzzle is missing.
And that leaves us with a pretty fundamental choice as learners and investigators. When historical data vanishes, do we fill that void with logical deduction, or do we fill it with myth? I mean, it's human nature to want to invent a fantastic story when we don't have all the answers. But I challenge you to look at the world through the lens we use today. Remain a rational, skeptical investigator. Demand the data, acknowledge the voids, and never let the mere absence of evidence push you into believing the impossible. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and remember, keep questioning the evidence.